It was the kind of news that shook Thornton Township and Dalton to their—
Tiffany Henyard's tenure as the leader of Dalton and Thornton Township was both divisive and controversial, culminating in her recent arrest, a dramatic downfall that left the communities she governed grappling with the aftermath of her administration. Her leadership was marred by financial scandals, clashes with critics, and widespread accusations of mismanagement. As her administration progressed, reports of questionable spending began to emerge, raising serious concerns about the handling of public funds. These issues eventually led to a full-scale investigation that uncovered patterns of misconduct, including allegations of using public money for personal expenses and attempts to obstruct investigations into her financial practices. One of the most shocking incidents involved a $43,000 shopping spree on Amazon, charged to municipal accounts. This blatant misuse of taxpayer dollars outraged residents and watchdog organizations alike, who criticized the apparent lack of fiscal responsibility and transparency. The community's frustration extended beyond the excessive spending to what many saw as a profound disregard for ethical leadership. In another widely criticized decision, Henyard spearheaded a $2 million project that further fueled public discontent. This, combined with her other controversial actions, painted a troubling picture of an administration that many felt prioritized personal gain over the public good. Tiffany Henyard's decision to build a skating rink in the township became a lightning rod for accusations of reckless spending and fiscal irresponsibility. Many residents questioned the necessity of such an expensive project, particularly when other pressing community needs seemed to be overlooked. The rink was widely perceived as a vanity project, especially since it was primarily operational during Henyard's personal events. This fueled allegations that it was a taxpayer-funded endeavor designed to enhance her public image rather than serve the community's genuine needs. Critics of Henyard's administration also accused her of mismanaging township finances and failing to uphold basic accountability in local governance. Over time, these concerns escalated, fostering an atmosphere of distrust and dissatisfaction among residents. The situation eventually reached a breaking point, prompting federal authorities to launch an investigation into her financial practices. The investigation revealed a troubling pattern of behavior, including allegations that Henyard had used public funds for personal expenses. This discovery added to the growing list of accusations against her, further damaging her reputation. Despite the mounting evidence, Henyard remained defiant, claiming she was the target of politically motivated attacks. She consistently denied any wrongdoing and doubled down on her narrative of victimization, even as the scandal continued to unfold. Tiffany Henyard's leadership style remained defiant even as controversy surrounded her. She went so far as to announce her intention to seek re-election in 2025, claiming the scandals were part of a larger conspiracy aimed at sabotaging her efforts. However, her bold declarations could not overshadow the mounting evidence against her. As the investigation deepened and more damning information came to light, Henyard's downfall became inevitable. Her arrest marked the culmination of a tenure defined by financial scandals, political missteps, and ongoing clashes with critics. The communities of Dalton and Thornton Township were left to grapple with the aftermath of her leadership, divided over how to interpret her dramatic fall from grace. For many, her arrest was seen as a long overdue moment of accountability. These residents viewed it as a necessary step toward addressing years of perceived mismanagement and restoring transparency and integrity to local government. To them, the investigation and ensuing legal battle symbolized a commitment to rooting out corruption and ensuring responsible leadership. Others, however, struggled to reconcile the allegations with their perception of Henyard as a once promising leader. Some continued to believe in her innocence, convinced that the charges were politically motivated. This division highlighted the complexity of her legacy, leaving the community torn between hope for justice and lingering disbelief in the face of serious accusations. Tiffany Henyard's leadership style was as controversial as her policies, often sparking clashes with the Dalton Village Board of Trustees and other local officials. These tensions created a constant source of drama and contributed to an atmosphere of dysfunction within the township. Henyard's approach was characterized by defiance and an unwillingness to back down from her positions, even in the face of mounting opposition. This made cooperation and compromise difficult to achieve, further complicating the challenges facing the community. Despite these issues, Henyard remained a polarizing figure in Dalton and Thornton Township. Her supporters viewed her as a bold and innovative leader willing to take risks to improve the community. They pointed to projects like the $2 million skating rink as evidence of her dedication to creating opportunities for local residents. To them, the criticism of her administration was politically motivated, and they believed Henyard was unfairly targeted by her opponents. Conversely, her detractors saw her leadership as a case study in fiscal irresponsibility, a lack of accountability, and a tendency to prioritize personal ambitions over the community's needs. They argued that her controversial projects and confrontational style only deepened the township's struggles, leaving behind a legacy of mismanagement and division. Critics accused Tiffany Henyard of using public funds to support projects that appeared more focused on enhancing her personal image than addressing the township's real needs. The $43,000 Amazon shopping spree, along with the controversial $2 million skating rink project, became emblematic of what many saw as her abuse of power for personal gain. Henyard's leadership was also defined by a series of failed initiatives and unfulfilled promises. While she pledged to improve local infrastructure, enhance public services, and create new economic opportunities, many of these projects were either delayed or abandoned altogether. The lack of follow-through on these commitments further eroded trust in her leadership and reinforced the perception that her administration was plagued by incompetence and mismanagement. The federal investigation into Henyard's financial dealings only deepened the community's sense of betrayal. The probe uncovered evidence of public funds being misused, including allegations that Henyard had used township money for personal expenses. These revelations not only raised serious questions about the integrity of her leadership, but also highlighted the lack of oversight applied to her administration's finances. For many residents, the findings underscored the need for greater accountability and transparency in local government. The investigation revealed a troubling pattern of behavior, with allegations that Tiffany Henyard had attempted to obstruct inquiries into her financial practices, further damaging her credibility and reputation. As Henyard faces serious legal battles in the months ahead, the impact of her leadership on Dalton and Thornton Township will continue to resonate. The scandal surrounding her administration has left the community deeply divided. Residents are now forced to confront the reality of her mismanagement and the far-reaching implications of her actions. While some see her arrest as a necessary step toward accountability, others question whether the full extent of her wrongdoing has truly been uncovered. In the wake of Henyard's arrest, Dalton and Thornton Township find themselves at a crossroads. The once promising leader, who many had hoped would bring change and progress to the area, has now become a symbol of political failure and scandal. As legal proceedings unfold, residents must grapple with how to move forward and whether they can rebuild the trust that was eroded during Henyard's tumultuous tenure. Her fall from grace marks a dramatic shift for both communities, which are now left to navigate the consequences of her controversial leadership and determine the path toward recovery and renewed faith in their local government. The challenges facing Dalton and Thornton Township in the aftermath of Tiffany Henyard's administration will not be easy to overcome. However, her downfall has forced the community to confront the urgent need for greater transparency, accountability, and responsible governance. Once regarded as a promising and ambitious leader, Henyard's legacy is now defined by the controversies and scandals that culminated in her dramatic arrest and the unraveling of her political career. Henyard's tenure as mayor of Dalton and supervisor of Thornton Township was characterized by escalating tensions, contentious leadership, and a growing number of scandals. Over time, she alienated many of her once loyal supporters, including members of the township's board of trustees, who became increasingly frustrated with her leadership style. Critics described her approach as overly centralized and uncooperative, further straining relationships within the local government. Her refusal to engage in meaningful collaboration with trustees, along with combative rhetoric and allegations of retaliation against opponents, created a toxic environment that undermined the effectiveness of her administration. This divisiveness, combined with financial mismanagement and allegations of corruption, ultimately led to her downfall. The aftermath of Henyard's leadership has left the community grappling with the consequences of her actions, as residents strive to rebuild trust and chart a path toward a more accountable and united local government. Tiffany Henyard's administration left Dalton and Thornton Township in a state of uncertainty, marked by frequent clashes with the Dalton Village Board of Trustees and residents. Meetings often devolved into chaos, with trustees accusing Henyard of overreach and attempting to consolidate power at the expense of transparency and collaboration. Henyard, in turn, retaliated with accusations of sabotage, and these confrontations frequently became the centerpiece of heated sessions. In one particularly dramatic incident, Henyard stormed out of a board meeting after being heckled by both trustees and residents. As she walked out, she shouted, "You should all be ashamed of yourselves." The outburst underscored a leadership style defined by constant conflict, not only with her critics but also with the broader political establishment she had once been part of. Henyard's combative tendencies extended beyond council chambers into the digital sphere. She became infamous for livestream rants on social media, where she lashed out at her opponents, branding them as enemies of progress. She often claimed her critics were driven by envy or personal grievances, a sentiment that resonated with some of her supporters but raised serious concerns about her professionalism. These public tirades further polarized the community, painting a picture of a leader who was more focused on defending herself against detractors than fostering unity and collaboration. While her approach endeared her to a loyal base, it also deepened the divides within the township and cast a shadow over her administration. Tiffany Henyard's polarizing leadership style created a stark divide within Dalton and Thornton Township, with some residents cheering her resilience, while others found her behavior unbecoming of an elected official. As tensions escalated, allegations of retribution and retaliation began to surface. Many residents feared that Henyard used her power to silence dissent and punish those who opposed her. Critics accused her of leveraging lawsuits, public shaming, and the strategic allocation of township resources to target individuals or groups who spoke out against her. These actions only deepened the divisions within the community. Henyard's supporters continued to admire her boldness, viewing her as a transformative figure, while her detractors saw a leader who prioritized personal ambition over the collective welfare of the township. By the time federal authorities became involved, Henyard's leadership had left Dalton and Thornton Township increasingly fractured. While her supporters held firm in the belief that she was being unfairly targeted, many residents saw her arrest as a necessary reckoning with the reality of her divisive governance. What had once been hailed as innovative and transformative leadership was now associated with financial mismanagement, personal retribution, and escalating political conflict. Her arrest marked the abrupt end of a controversial tenure, leaving the community to grapple with the fallout from her actions. The downfall of Tiffany Henyard marked not just the end of a chapter in local politics, but also raised difficult questions about the future of the community she once led. The seeds of her demise were planted early in her administration, when her leadership style began to strain relationships within her own ranks. Henyard alienated key allies, including members of the Board of Trustees who had initially supported her policies but became disillusioned by her increasingly autocratic approach. One of Henyard's former assistants, Carmen Carlisle, became a vocal critic of her leadership, accusing Henyard of disregarding established procedures to pursue her personal agenda. "She doesn't consult anyone. It's her way or the highway," Carlisle claimed in a recent interview. This sentiment was shared by several trustees, who grew frustrated with the lack of transparency and the increasing centralization of power under Henyard's leadership. A key point of contention was Henyard's tendency to bypass board meetings and make critical decisions without consulting the trustees. Critics argued that this approach undermined the democratic process and made it difficult for the township to function effectively. As one trustee put it, "You need to show up to the table, to engage and work together, especially when it affects the community." Henyard's failure to heed this advice only intensified tensions, creating a rift between her and the very people she needed to collaborate with to govern. Tensions within the Board of Trustees reached a breaking point when Tiffany Henyard made critical appointments without board approval, further deepening the rift between her and the trustees. One of the most controversial decisions during her tenure was the hiring of Ronald Burge as Dalton's police chief, despite reports that his state certification was inactive at the time. This move sparked outrage among trustees, who argued that it was illegal to hire someone for such a key position without ensuring all necessary qualifications were met. However, a judge later ruled that Burge could serve in an interim capacity, which only fueled the ongoing power struggle between Henyard and the board. One trustee accused Henyard of showing a blatant disregard for proper procedures, a sentiment that became emblematic of the growing frustrations with her leadership style. Allegations of intimidation also plagued Henyard's administration. Critics accused her of using her position to silence dissent and consolidate her authority. These accusations, combined with broader claims of financial mismanagement, painted a picture of a leader increasingly isolated from the community and embroiled in controversy. Henyard's leadership was increasingly defined by conflict and dysfunction, as the growing divide between her and the board highlighted the failure to effectively govern and work collaboratively. Tiffany Henyard's combative rhetoric and unilateral decision-making alienated those around her, and her inability to address these concerns only deepened the sense of dysfunction within her administration. Perhaps the most serious allegations against Henyard involved her handling of township finances. Trustees accused her of withholding financial records, forging signatures, and bypassing board approval to push through projects and decisions that aligned with her personal agenda. One former trustee described her tactics as a shell game, alleging that Henyard manipulated funds to obscure deficits and finance unauthorized projects. What was initially presented as a budget surplus under her leadership was later revealed to be a facade that concealed millions of dollars in debt. This revelation came to light through a preliminary audit commissioned by the township, which painted a grim picture of systemic mismanagement and a shocking lack of oversight. Henyard dismissed the audit report as a politically motivated attack, claiming that her critics were simply jealous and attempting to undermine her efforts to serve the community. Despite the growing backlash, she remained defiant, using public events such as turkey giveaways and holiday parties to maintain her presence and rally her base. However, critics described these events as little more than attempts to distract from the mounting controversies surrounding her leadership, further fueling perceptions of a leader more focused on self-promotion than addressing the township's serious issues. The distractions Henyard created from the controversies surrounding her administration allowed her to continue portraying herself as the victim of a political conspiracy. She frequently took to social media platforms, like Facebook Live, to lash out at her detractors, often referring to them as Judas figures and vowing to sue everyone involved in what she claimed was an elaborate scheme to destroy her reputation. Her combative rhetoric and defiance only deepened the divisions within the community. While her supporters continued to cheer her resilience, many residents began to question her ability to govern effectively in the face of such serious allegations. The financial mismanagement claims, in particular, struck at the heart of her administration's credibility, eroding trust among township residents and leaving the community grappling with the fallout of years of alleged fiscal irresponsibility. Henyard's tenure ultimately became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked authority. The combination of financial scandals, allegations of retaliation, and a divisive leadership style turned her time in office into a period of turmoil for Dalton and Thornton Township. The once celebrated super mayor, who had risen to prominence with promises of transformative leadership, left behind a legacy defined by scandal, dysfunction, and a shattered sense of trust within the community. As Tiffany Henyard's arrest unfolded, it sent shockwaves through the South's suburban political landscape. Many residents of Dalton and Thornton Township viewed her downfall as a long-overdue reckoning, while others, particularly her supporters, framed it as a politically motivated attack on a young black woman in a position of power. The FBI had been quietly investigating Henyard for months, gathering financial records and witness testimonies related to her roles in both Dalton and Thornton Township. Reports indicated that the investigation had expanded to include her political committee and charitable activities, amid allegations of money laundering and the misuse of public funds. When news of Henyard's arrest broke, reactions within the community were mixed. Supporters accused the FBI of targeting Henyard because of her position and her efforts to challenge the political establishment, while critics saw the arrest as the first step toward justice for years of alleged mismanagement and corruption. The investigation reportedly uncovered troubling patterns of governance, including the diversion of public funds for personal projects and campaign activities. Henyard's arrest left the future of Dalton and Thornton Township hanging in the balance, with the community grappling with the fallout from her controversial leadership. The future of Dalton and Thornton Township remains uncertain, with both residents and trustees grappling with the aftermath of Tiffany Henyard's controversial leadership. Calls for new leadership are growing, as many advocate for the restoration of trust and integrity in local government. One trustee commented, "This community deserves transparency and responsible leadership. We need to focus on rebuilding." The question of what comes next for the township remains unclear. Will Henyard fight the charges and potentially stage a comeback, or has this marked the definitive end of her political journey? Only time will tell. However, one thing is certain, this dramatic chapter in the township's history is far from over. For many, Henyard's political career has left behind a legacy marked by scandal, controversy, and unresolved tensions. The unfolding legal battles and continued scrutiny of her administration will undoubtedly shape both her legacy and the future of the communities she once led. Whether Henyard is ultimately found guilty or exonerated, the fallout from her tenure has forced Dalton and Thornton Township to confront the importance of transparency, accountability, and community trust in local governance. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe Buzz Royale for the latest updates. Thanks for watching.